Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to my podcast, my YouTube channel. I am Dr. E. Jean Pemberton of Enda's Education. That's right. And as you can see, the focus for today's video is tips to prepare your dissertation defense presentation. Before I get started, I want to encourage everybody to do me a huge favor, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Make sure that you like this video. And then, please, ma'am, please, sir, go ahead and share this video with someone who you know is in a doctoral program. Because if they are in a doctoral program, eventually, they're going to have to prepare to defend their doctoral research. That's right. So, this video is really just to give you a few tips that I use in preparing for my dissertation. When I was preparing for this dissertation, I did not find really a lot of good tips on how to prepare a dissertation defense. I saw a few examples, but I could not find any that were specific to what I was looking for. And so because of that, I decided to go ahead and put a video together because I've had a few of colleagues that are preparing to defend their dissertation this spring, and congratulations to those who have already done so. And so in coaching and working with them and even providing them with an example of what I used, I decided that, hey, this is a really good video to put together to share with anyone that's out there in the world wide web world. That's a lot of words, W's, but just so that you can feel a little bit more comfortable as you are moving in closer towards your finish line. So, before and as I'm talking about that, what I wanted to say is, first of all, if you're at this point of your dissertation defense, congratulations to you. Job well done. I know the pain that you went through to get to this place. I know the anxieties that you must be feeling right now as you're preparing to defend. But I want to share with you that once you get to this point, it's not that it's a shoe in, but you are definitely much closer to the finish line than you have been when you first started this journey. Now the goal is for you to do what you can do really well, and that's talk about your research. So if you did your research, which I'm sure you did, you should be able to just flow with the information and make that thing go. Okay. So the key thing is, as you are presenting, you want to make sure that you are structured in your presentation, that your presentation is easy to flow, that you provide the information that is necessary in a very cliff notes. In old school, we say cliff notes, but it is a snapshot of what your research is all about. And at the end of the day, you want to make sure that those who are listening to you, that is your committee chair, as well as your committee members, are listening to you present your information with the passion that you should have, as well as with the knowledge that you should have gained as you did your research. Okay, so what I did was I actually made a copy of my PowerPoint presentation. I'm not going to hit all of the slides. I'm going to kind of skim through them and share with you my thoughts and the patterns that I had when I put together my presentation. When I did my presentation, my grade, I made a 98 and I wanted 100, but a 98 was good. And I'll share with you why. I received a 98 and some of the recommendations. I didn't receive a lot, but a few recommendations that were provided to me. But at the end of the day, I passed with flying colors, thumbs up. And of course, when I passed, I was so very, very excited about that. Again, this um, research that I did was very passionate. All of my research has become very passionate. And each research that I've done as relates to working on degrees have had different phases. They were part of different phases in my life. And so, they grew on me. And there are stories with the stories of me putting together the research and getting to the finish line. So I want to go to, first of all, the next slide. And as you can see, I have my slides up and ready, and hopefully, let's see if I can get this to work because I'm sharing. Okay, so hopefully my computer won't stall, and it is stalling a little bit. Okay, there we go. So now, the first thing you want to do is, if you can, is put together a PowerPoint or Google slide. As you are doing that, some people are not PowerPoint people. If you're not, then at least have an outline put together. And I'm going to talk a little bit, and speak towards the outline and what that can look like, and how that outline can be very helpful for you. Because again, you want to make sure your presentation is very structured, that there is a good flow, so that those who are listening to you can flow with the discussion that you're having. So you don't want to be all over the place and sound not prepared. Okay, you want to be prepared for your presentation. I've shared this in a previous video, that this is really a job interview. This is your interview, so you want to dress the dress the to impress. You want to have your presentation very professional. I did share on another video, and I'll share with this one as well. Make sure that as you are preparing, you want to have professional clothes on. Do not dress casual. Again, this is an interview, so you want to have that, and be dressed professional. Also, again, make sure that you have a documentation that you can use and that is available for your committee members and your committee chair to be able to follow as you are going through your research. So if you are not a PowerPoint person, please put together an outline. I would recommend having that outline submitted a day in advance, or at least have it available during the presentation. I say a day in advance because if you are have anyone that is via Zoom, like some people are earning their degrees through online programs, and so you just want to make sure that your committee chair, committee members, and if your program chair is there as well, that they have something that they can look at and be prepared to receive your research. Okay, so that's going to be really important. But either way, whether you do it, provide them with an outline prior to or the day of, please have something available to them and for them before you begin your presentation. All right, so what you are looking at right now is what I had as for my title page, and I again changed it a little bit for the title page just so that you can see some of the content that you want to have. If you're not using a PowerPoint presentation, you definitely want to at least have a two-pager. One page will have the title, and the title page should include the main title of your research and then subtitles of your research. And I'll share what my research is in just a little bit so you can see what I'm speaking of. But of course, if you're working in dissertation, on a dissertation, you will probably know exactly what I'm speaking of, and that's the main title. So my main title was retention strategies, and then my subtitle was additional things that was part of that. You also want to make sure that you have your name, your first and last name, or your initial, however you want your presentation to be documented, because this is going to be forever. Well, I don't want to say forever, but this is how your trend is going to be, right? This is your labeling. So you want to make sure whatever you choose as your name, your first, your last name, your first name, your middle initial, last name, however you choose, you want to begin to start moving in that direction. As you can see, I use my first initial and then my full middle name and my last name. And I do that because my mother and I have similar first names. So just to make sure that, because my mother did amazing things, just to make sure that there's an identity of who I am, and not to have the gray lines, I use my first initial, and I use that as my labeling for the work that I do. And then, of course, submit it to the faculty of the name of your university and the city and state of the location of your university, and partial fulfillment for the requirements for whatever the name of your degree is, your doctoral degree. And then most doctoral degrees, I don't want to assume that all, but most will have a school. For instance, my degree was under the Simmons School of Education and Human Development. So I named the school as well. So I did provide an example for you, which says the School of Engineer. That's just an example, but it could be the School of Education, the School of Social Services, the social science, whatever your school is, a school of law, whatever your school is, or department. So it could be the school of or the department of, however the labeling is, you definitely want to include that information. The next thing on that title slide or the title page, the name of your committee chair. You want to list the name of your committee chair, and of course, behind their name, PhD or whatever their degree acronym is, and then the committee members. And I also included my program chair. My program chair was very, very essential for me and very much invested in me being able to get to the finish line as well. And it just shows also a sign of appreciation because they're the person that gets you past the gates, right? Your research has to be submitted via your committee chair, approved by your committee chair and committee members to the department chair. And the department chair, at least at my university, had the final say and to make sure that everything matched and met the criterias for a dissertation presentation. So I also included my department chair, and my recommendation is that you do that as well. All right, that you recognize them as well. So the next thing I am going to share on my slide, and I know it's moving slow, is I shared this slide with some of my friends, and for me, it's important that I have everything in front of me that I'm going to say because when I'm moving and I'm speaking and I'm talking, I'm moving fast, and my mind is going fast. And so the thank you PowerPoint slide was important for me. You don't have to put that on your slide or in your notes. I do that because I don't want to forget. So if you are similar to me, and you want to make sure that you have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted, that's a good place to start at the very beginning by thanking your committee chair, your committee members, and your department chair. And I actually had their names there. So, and their role. Okay. So I had their names. I'm just showing you as the list. And so it was just me thanking them. And I just did a quick snapshot of their investment and their time commitment to helping me to get to the finish line, their recommendations, the information that they shared with me was valuable, the time valuable. Again, these individuals have full-time jobs, they are working, they are teaching, they are also putting together research to publish as well. And so you definitely want to provide them with gratitude by thanking them. And so I thank them at the beginning and at the end, but I put thank you as an actual slide for my within my PowerPoint presentation. So those were my first two slides. All right, so now we talked about an outline, and I actually had an outline provided to them, and my outline was my overview that I have that you see now. Of course, you also see the title of my research, which was Retention Strategies, a Mixed Methods Research Study on Factors that Motivated Black Educators to Stay and Teach at a K through 12 school during a national crisis. And so they did not get the full PowerPoint presentation. What they received is the overview. And with the overview were six categories, six bullets, and under each bullet were different items that I discussed within each bullet. So the first one was my background. My background came from my chapter one, information from my chapter one, which included the introduction of my research and the statement of the problem. So that was my first bullet and my first discussion. The second bullet and my second discussion was the objective. I shared the statement of the purpose of my research, the significance of my research, and I want to share with you, it is important for you to share the purpose and your significance of the research. Your dissertation chair, your committee members, and your department chair needs to understand the value that your research brings to the body of knowledge. And I'm sure they know it because you've gone through the process, and they have read your paperwork, your research, and the outcomes. But it is important for you to talk about it, to share about it, to have that passion. They need to know that you truly uh, believe and know that your research brings significance to the body of knowledge. Okay. So that was my objective. I shared that the information of why my research was important. My third area that I discussed, and again, you don't have to do everything in this order. I know that qualitative studies maybe they do differ, from a mixed method. So I don't want to even say maybe, but they do defer, and you should really, I would recommend go in the order of what your research looks like, your chapters 1, 2, 3, 4. If you have 6, I had 6 chapters in my research, but most research have an average of 4 to 5. Mine, I did 6 just because I wanted to, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. My conclusion needed not to be so overshadowed by my analysis and findings. So, but anyway, my third part was my chapter 2. Okay, so my first and second were actually in my chapter 1. My number 3 was my chapter 2, literature review. And within my literature review, I actually provided historical context and my theoretical framework. Some people do historical context in a different chapter. For me, that's how I presented my research, my dissertation. And so that's what was included in my lit review. Okay, so however you do it, again, this is just my organization, and just hopefully this will be very helpful for you. So literature review, historical context, and my theoretical framework. The next section was my methods section, my methodology. And within my methodology, I shared my research design. Within my research design, I talked about the research design that I used. I also talked about why my the research design that I chose was the best research design for me to be able to collect my data and process my data. Okay, so you want to make sure you validate your research design and be able to defend why this is the research methodology that you chose for your dissertation. Okay, for your data collection and process. And so that's what I provided in that section, as well as my data collection process. Again, my research was a mixed methods research. So my data collection process, where I used qualitative collection data, I collected data that was qualitative and quantitative. So I discussed my process of collecting the data, as well as my process of analyzing the data and merging the data together. So, and that was my number 5, data analysis and findings. So I discussed my data analysis for quantitative data, or data. Some people say data. So, but either way, data. And how I collected that data, and then qualitative data or data, how I collected that information, as well as my process of analyzing, and then the merging of both together, and the findings of the merged information. Okay. So, and that was the section of 5. And then the last part was my conclusions. My conclusion included contributions, limitations, and recommendations. So let me talk a little bit about contributions. Contributions, and that means how does again, the significance of the research is really adding more information, or adding, I would say, more content to the significance of my research. That's what I provided in my conclusions, my contributions. I also talked about my limitations. And you need to be a critique of your own, provide critique of your own research, because your research should have further recommendations of how your research should be used, and how more research should be done on your actual research, because this is just the beginning. You're at the finish line of your dissertation, you're at the finish line of your degree, but this is, once you are officially finished, it is the starting line of a new life of a researcher, and expanding on your research. Okay, so limitations, share what your limitations were. For me, I had some limitations as it relates to, because my research was done during the season of COVID. So we were limited as it relates to interviewing educators live on campus. I could only do educators on certain campuses because of the conditions, that the time frame of COVID-19. Also, my focus was on African American and Black educators, so it was limited to educators who were African American, Black educators. It was also limited to educators who were teaching prior to COVID-19, and still were teaching through the COVID crisis. So I didn't interview teachers who started teaching during the COVID crisis. It was limited. My research was limited to educators who taught prior to COVID, and remain as educators in the K through 12 school districts. All right, so limitations were there. And then, of course, you can also speak to your own limitations. For instance, if you were doing research on a specific subject, but you did not have that experience, you can speak on your limitations as it relates to the experience, or maybe the people that you interview. Perhaps you were interviewing individuals, and so you might have limitations as relates to those that you interviewed. So please make sure that you share those limitations, okay? And then including in recommendations, you could talk about how those limitations can be addressed and further research can be done to, um, expand on your research to reduce some of those limitations. Okay. So that's my outline. That's the outline that I recommend for you to put together. Not necessarily the way mine is, but as you can see, I have my bullets and then I have sub bullets, or topics or main themes, and then sub themes within within each one, so that as you are moving along the way, you have a guide or a yellow brick road that you can use to continue with your presentation. Because typically most presentations, the time that you have available is 20 minutes. So you don't want to waste your time fumbling. You don't want to waste your time trying to figure out what you're going to say. You want to make sure that you are in sync with your information and that you are doing a very good job staying on task by presenting everything that is necessary for you to be successful with your defense. Okay. So now I'm going to show you a few of my PowerPoints. And so I'm going to, let me do this because I don't want it to have to flip it. I want to just go and click on a few. Let me see. Let me go to escape. And that way I can click on each slide. And on each slide, let's see here how we can get it to work, if it's going to work for you, for me. There we go. All right. So now this is the next slide that I have. And this comes from my background. This type of slide really comes from the background. Oh, okay, there we go. It flipped back to that. So let me go back a little bit. It comes from my background of being an educator, being a preacher, being something that's going to capture my audience. And this was important to me because of the fact that my dissertation chair, my committee members, they lived a lot of my dissertation, right? Helping me to put it together. And because of that, I wanted to make sure I brought some things to the table that we just to wow them, right? I didn't want them to be bored with what we already discussed, what they've already read. I wanted to bring them into the wow. So this is where you are live, you're on stage, and I would say you're entertaining people, right? You're edutating because again, you're on an interview. So of course, the obvious thing for me was March 2020 because I was speaking on my subject, my content was inclusive of the COVID-19 crisis. And so, of course, I brought that information, wowed them with it. Of course, whenever you have a PowerPoint, you don't want to have a lot of verbiage. You just want to have some words with pictures, and you want to have graphs and data, all of that information as well. So that's going to be important to you. So that was my next slide. I talked about a little bit about the COVID-19 and how that impacted the world. And if you were living, which everybody who's listening to me was, then you understand how what COVID-19 did to the world that we lived in. And then, of course, one of the things that I focused on in my discussion was some people were saying that Black teachers were quitting. And so those were the different subtopics or sub discussions that you see as relates to that. Okay. So as relates to Black teachers quitting, and this is what really prompted me and got me into a phase of this is what research I want to do. I want to do research on finding facts and gathering data as to relates to whether teachers decided to stay or to quit, because the focus during that time period was that teachers were quitting, Black teachers were quitting. There was a rise on the exodus of Black teachers in public schools and K through 12 schools because of the COVID-19 crisis. And so that was my discussion, and I continued with that. The next thing I want to share with you as you are putting together your PowerPoint presentation or your discussion points, you definitely want to make sure, and my slide is moving slow because of my Zoom. So hopefully I'm not losing anyone, but you want to make sure that you are giving data, right? You want to make sure that you're giving data. So hopefully, let me see. Let me go to stop sharing because hopefully everybody can see me and hear me because my information is acting weird. It says uh, there we go. Okay. It's just saying I'm having connection problems. So, as is such in technology. Okay. Well, there we go. So now, of course, I said probably not. We're not going anywhere, and I'm an educator, so I didn't go anywhere. So that was the next thing. All right. So now I want to go to the next slide. The next slide, it talks about the background. And remember, I told you that was the next main slide to transition into. So you want to give your background introduction, your statement of the problem. You want to add a little bit of conversation to it. But again, you don't want spit out what they've already read. So you can just hit some great bullets. Make sure that you are supporting what your research is all about and why this research is important. Okay. You should always have background somewhere, in your dissertation, why you decided to go this route and what background supports the information as it relates to your dissertation study. All right. So now we talked about data. There it is. I gave some data. And of course, whenever you are providing data, you want to make sure that you also give the source of where you received your data so that that can be solidified. Your information can be solidified. So that was my data that I shared. That was the information. And I also continue with additional data. So data is good because it mixes up the conversation. It also provides a good eye-catching moment. So hopefully you have that, and I'm sure you do in your research. Okay. So now, then I have my objective, and then we're going to go to the lit review. So now I do have a lot of slides. I shared this with a friend of mine who I shared my slides with, and there's a disclaimer. For me, again, I have to have everything in my face, but I would recommend probably no more than 20 slides, 15 to 20 slides. I have a lot more than that. But again, I talk fast, move fast, and they had everything outlined in front of them, so they were able to follow through. Okay. So, historical context, I did do my historical context in my lit review. And so that's why it's provided, that information is provided there, as well as my theoretical framework, theories on retention. My theoretical framework, I use the Hertzberg's two-factor theory, but I also provided other theories that were similar that could have been used, but discussed what the benefits of using those theories were, but why they weren't the right theory for me to use. So at the end of the day, the theory that I chose to use was Hertzberg's two-factor theory. And so I gave some historical context as relates to that theory as well. The next thing, let me see. And like I said, my connection is acting real slow. My computer's acting weird. So I gave some historical context. That is a picture of me, moi. I have a relative, uh, HB Pemberton, who launched a high school back in 1894. So of course, education runs in our background. So I'm not going to go into the slides of the other two theories, but I do want to show you a slide of the theory that I used, which was the Hertzberg's theory. And you should have a slide related to your own theory. Okay. And so as you can see, there is a snapshot of the theory focusing on motivating factors, intrinsic values, and extrinsic values, and as well as when the theory was established by Hertzberg in 1959. So that's a pretty good snapshot. And I discussed the benefits of the theory, why the theory worked, and then I moved into my methodology. My methodology and my research I used, and again, it was a mixed methods, convergent design. I did have to do IRB approval, so that's good to share. If you had to use IRB approval, that would be good to share. If you did not, you can also share why it wasn't necessary. It's important for them to know that you did have that on your mind, whether you used it or not. Okay. And then I talked about my collection process as relates to, of course, IRB approval, population sampling. My Qualtrics is what I used for my quantitative data collection procedures. And then for my qualitative, I used Zoom. I also talked about the programs that I use to interpret my process, my data, and that was SPSS. And then in vivo was for my qualitative data as well. There are some other things that I know that you could talk about in methodology, and that could be the validity of your process. That is important. Why your research is reliable, the ethical considerations that you use and the assumptions that you use. Like for me, when I had my questionnaires, my assumption is that all of the participants answered all of the questions truthfully. They understood the questions and the responses. And so, because those who answered my electronic questionnaire, they could remain anonymous if they chose to do so. So, therefore, I did not have an opportunity to validate whether or not their information was correct. And so, but there were some that, of course, I interviewed and I could validate by conversation what they provided for me as well. All right. So now the next thing is I shared in this section and I talked about it as well is the conceptual framework. Again, it was shaped by Hertzberg's two-factor theory. And I used Creswell and Creswell's framework to build a poem. And then I designed it for me to use so that it would fit and help me to get the type of data information that was necessary for me to move forward and analyze my data. All right, so now I'm going to move through a couple of other slides. I did provide an analysis snapshot of my quantitative data and my qualitative data. But again, it was a mixed method. So both of those slides had similarities of how they looked. And so I'm going to stop sharing because it is okay. There we go. So that's kind of an example of what it looked like. My questions Q5, 7, 8, Q6, 9, and 10. So, of course, quantitative data for intrinsic and extrinsic values, and then the cross tabulations. And those who, of course, my committee chair and committee members understood when I talked about cross tabulation because, again, they lived within my dissertation process. They understood that the information related to that. I also had a slide about my findings. And so you definitely wanted to talk about your data analysis and then the findings that you have. And I discussed my findings. And of course, again, they know my findings too because they have that information. You can list your findings. I discussed what intrinsic value findings that I had and what extrinsic value findings that I have for quantitative, qualitative, and when I merged the data together. But what I want to show you is I do have a findings percentage. So my theory was there. So again, that was like the slide previous then was just kind of a setup for me. And then my quantitative findings, there's the information there. Okay, so there you see the information. And then I did the same thing when it came to discussing my qualitative findings as well. So, all right, so now what I want to do is go to my merge discussion and my key themes. So when I was looking at how I wanted to present and thinking of a structure of my presentation, my dissertation, and I'm going to share this in a different PowerPoint, is I wanted to make sure that my research added value to the body of knowledge. So I actually came up with my own retention theory. And my retention theory is stay. And so, as you can see, and it's already published, that's why I'm sharing it now. I wanted to wait before I share this, is to make sure it's published. And that was my theory on finding factors that motivated Black educators to stay and teach at a K through 12 school during a national crisis. And so, my retention theory is what I came up with at the end of my research. And so, that was what I presented. And ooh, I didn't bring this back. And when my dissertation chair and committee members, they were aware of the theory. But of course, when you present the information, the lights came on and they asked me some really good questions, which I'm appreciative of stay, and asked me to add some things into my research that would align with what some information that they shared with me that they knew about based on their own research. And so that's why I got a 98. So they wanted me to share that, go further than that, because they asked me questions as it relates to stay, where did I get it from? And I just use it as an acronym for me because acronyms help me to be able to share my information where it makes sense to me. Again, giving myself that type of flow. You definitely want a summary slide and a conclusion slide. And again, we talked about contributions, limitations, recommendations. And with my theory, I created a framework as well for retention strategies of Black educators who taught and satisfaction, how to keep them satisfied during while they're teaching during a national crisis. So that is my actual framework that I have. You also want to make sure that you share next steps in your scholarly work. What are Of course, hopefully, your plan is to publish your articles for this dissertation from the dissertation and use your research to further study whatever your research is. Okay, so you definitely want to let them know that you do have plans to go further with your research, and then you can just thank them, and then that concludes your research, your dissertation. So, again, I had a lot, and when I say a lot, I had a lot of slides, but again, some of those slides were just like a 1 second transition slide for me to get to the next point and the next discussion. I presented this last year, so I know kind of maybe moved through a little bit quickly because again, it was really fresh last year in no, March 27th is when I did my presentation. And again, it was very fresh. It was exciting. It's still exciting. I still love it to death. And I'm doing other research and furthering my research from this research that I completed and presented as well. So these are just a few tips to prepare your dissertation defense. And what I hope is that this is helpful for you because, again, as I was putting together my defense, I could not find really a detailed example of what it looks like. I'm very visual, and so and I don't want to copy anybody. I wanted my own, but sometimes it's good to have an example of what it looks like so that you can, put your best foot forward. That's important when you are presenting your dissertation. When you're defending your dissertation because you've done all of this work, and what you don't want is to have a poor defense and you have to go back to the drawing board, not on your research, but to, do an improved job as it relates to your defending, because they have to know that you truly love your research, that you are passionate about your research, and you can defend by standing in front of any live audience and talk about the importance of your research. Because at the end of the day, my brothers and sisters, they have to stamp their name on it. They have to sign off on it and say, yes, I approve this research. And because it's going to be published, right? So, and you want it published. So make sure that you do put your best foot forward. So now, if you're on the brinks of preparing to defend, and this happening tomorrow or the next day, hopefully this is helpful for you. But if you're not, you have a little bit of time to work through it. And again, just use my recommendations as a guideline. Again, my research was a mixed methods. So qualitative is going to be a bit different in how you present. And I'm sure you can just look up information as relates to preparing to defend a qualitative dissertation. But howsoever, and you want to make sure that again it supports your research, so I would start off with the outline. That's what I did. I put an outline together from my paper, my research paper outline, and I built my defense from that, and I just put in things that were very, very important. So I'm just going to again go to that outline, and hopefully that this outline that you can see what mines look like will be helpful for you as you are putting together your dissertation. So I had six main topics or subjects, and then you can just have a slide for each one, or you can just have one slide and, you know, put the word introduction on there, and the word statement of the problem on your slide. You could just have 6 slides and then have in your hand, which is what I know some people do, you can have in your hand some of the, more detailed information that you want to provide so that you don't have to have a lot of slides. It's not necessary to have a lot of slides. It's not even necessary to have any slides. But I do recommend whatever you decide, make sure you at least have something in your hand to discuss your dissertation, to defend your dissertation with, and then make sure that you provide a handout to members of your committee and members of your dissertation chair, members of your committee, and your program chair if he or she is going to be part of the audience who's going to be listening to you. The next thing, I don't know if this is the last thing, but I want to also recommend as you are preparing for your defense, please make sure if you are in person that you arrive at least an hour or an hour and 30 minutes early. And when I say arrive, I mean be in the room location. That is so important because if you are going to use a PowerPoint presentation, you want to make sure that you arrive early enough that all the technology is in line and in sync with each other. I had we had a little bit of difficulties with technology, but I arrived early enough to work it out so that I could start on time. Okay. So please do not show up 30 minutes prior to, get in that room as early as possible so that you can make sure that all of the glitches are taken care of because sometimes technology, it's not where it can be. It can be difficulty. You want to make sure that whoever's supposed to have the room open is there. Make sure they have the technology turned on for you. Make sure that you have access to everything that you have. Also, have a backup plan. Okay. So the backup plan can be a printed version of the outline instead of everything being electronic, just in case something doesn't work right, just in case something doesn't align or get in sync. So I did have paperwork with me. I always carry, I share with my friend, my father taught me to carry a pair and a spare. That means whatever you do, have two versions of what you need and a backup plan just in case. So I did have a paper version as well as, of course, my electronic version so that in case the electronic did not work, I was good to go. I didn't have to worry. So I actually printed my PowerPoint, and then I also had an outline. Okay. So make sure you are there for that and then breathe. Okay. Get there early enough so that you can breathe. You can make sure that you're good to go. You're at, get you some rest if you can. I don't know if I rested, but I was there early enough to breathe and to get the jitters out, to walk around a little bit, to get into my head so that my headspace was in sync and I was not all over the place. Okay. So make sure you get there really, really early just so that you're prepared and you're not flustered and working with last minute, you know, obstacles that can happen. It always happens sometimes. I don't want to say always, but it happens often enough that you just don't want that to be your issue or your struggle. Okay. So don't forget, let me say this one more time. Make sure you dress professionally. Do not wear jeans. Ladies, let's be professional with how we're looking as well. Again, the focus is the knowledge, right? The focus is the knowledge, but you want to be cute as you present your knowledge to my sisters and to my brothers. You want to look professional as well as women. So I wore black. You don't have to wear black. Black is just something that I wear whenever I'm presenting, but definitely you want to, again, you're going for an interview. So do your best to dress your best. Okay. That's going to be important. But wear comfortable shoes. Okay. So I want to say that wear comfortable shoes, whatever shoes you wear, and comfortable clothing. But when I say comfortable, professional, but where you feel comfortable and not so intense. And then if you are a person that eats breakfast, eat breakfast in the morning or drink some water, whatever, but just be careful with what you eat and drink because you don't want to have any biological, physical issues as you're preparing to present. And then afterwards, go celebrate. Okay. I did ask a few friends who were presenting this year their dissertation defending if people were allowed to watch. I've had some that their defense was closed. I know that last year we were able to have open defense, but many of them are now not allowing other people to be part of the defense. So that is very possible for some very good reasons. And I won't go into everything, but I do know sometimes they want to be able to have a conversation with you without having an audience so they can be very transparent with your presentation and provide the type of feedback that will be helpful and beneficial to you as well. And so whenever you have an audience that's outside of the committee chair and committee members, then it can work against you and them if they're not able to be as transparent because they are going to be very cautious as to what they say to you if other people are listening, because you want to treat the situation with a different type of care. So if they are going to allow for you to defend in front of an audience, just make sure whomever you invite, just share with them the protocols, right? So that they can be aligned with the expectations of your university and not place you at a disadvantage. So that's going to be important. If you're presenting via Zoom, make sure everything is in place. Make sure everyone who needs the link have the link, and make sure that you practice, practice, practice. Like be somewhere where you can have good Wi-Fi. Like right now, my Wi-Fi is struggling, but that's okay. But you want to make sure that you are at a place with a good Wi-Fi. If you can, maybe be at, if you can't be at your university, be at a public library if they have a closed room. So you have really good Wi-Fi, but you definitely do not want to be at a place where there's a lot of noise or any distractions. You want to be in a space and place where it's just you and your Wi-Fi, your Zoom, and you can focus on presenting. Okay, so eliminate as many distractions as possible so that you can have a successful defense. All right, so that's it. I hopefully my video was helpful to you in preparing for your dissertation defense presentation. Again, I'm Dr. E. Jean Pemberton, and for more information about getting to the finish line and the tips on how to get to the finish line and some of the things, tips that I used for me to get to the finish line, you can go to my website. My website is endaseducation.com. That's endaseducation.com. You can go to my website. Again, I will be also, I'm going to post additional videos as it relates to preparing for your doctoral degree and your dissertation. We are now launched, and we're going to really, really get busy with providing scholarship information, fellowship information for you who are my colleagues that are preparing, that are in doctoral degree programs, and you're looking for scholarship money, because we know a lot of things are happening economically and we want you to get to the finish line. So we'll talk more about that. And the links are going to be on my website as well. So of course you can go to my website to get that information. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. Make sure you do me a huge favor to like this video, to share this video with someone who is preparing to earn their degree, their doctoral degree, and then subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can be notified of future videos that I post as it relates to getting to the finish line. All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening, and you have an amazing, amazing, amazing journey as you prepare to earn your doctoral degree. God bless.